All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good morning, Terry. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the Swiss Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Terry Oldfield accepted our invitation to our show. Terry, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's very nice talking to you. Man, the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic, some people believe in the vaccine, some people don't, but definitely, has affected, all of us. And in one way or another, some countries took this time more seriously than others. And then how affected you? How affected your creativity? How you holding up?
Well, we were on tour in Europe in 2019, and after the tour, we went to Thailand for a couple of weeks, and that's when it all started to happen, just around Christmas time. We already had our tour for 2020 lined up, and we had to cancel everything, which was very difficult. Hard to get used to the idea of being restricted like that. Mm. But we have a beautiful place here in Australia, and have my studio. And we just gradually settled into doing stuff here, doing stuff in the garden, coming back into the present moment, and just making the most of it. But yeah. I was a bit disappointed in there was one particular thing we were asked to do in the Czech Republic, which I'd prepared for. It was at a music camp, and I was asked to do some master classes for professional musicians, orchestral players, and I was looking forward to that because I have no training, you see. Yeah. And I was going to talk about improvisation and the connection with the intuition and playing new things, which is not easy for a orchestral player. I noticed when they're in between their parts, they pick up the newspaper and they're very relaxed in that sense. But when you ask them to come up with something from their own, from the depths of their being, like sort of in the moment, it's a bit more difficult, because I have run a few workshops like that before, and you can be very technically brilliant, but to actually allow the music to flow through you as though you're a channel is a very difficult thing, because you have to actually get out of the way and forget about all your training and somehow just be a kind of conduit for the energy of the moment.
That's a very good point. What do you think that people have a hard time doing that? I mean, letting go in a way, and then let the music flow. And
well, it's a bit like when I started learning the flute, because I'm self-taught. I taught myself.
Yeah,
it's really important to do the training to tell the fingers need to know where all the keys are. You need to have that technique. You need to have the body needs to feel comfortable with the instrument, and then you've got all the with wind instruments. You have all the breathing to cope with as well. You have to develop your the breath and the strength to create the embouchure for the flute.
Yeah.
So you have to. It's almost like doing weight training for the lips. All these muscles around here have to be developed in such a way that they can produce a very narrow, strong jet of air. Because when you first start playing the flute, you can. I can actually demonstrate.
That would be great. Yeah.
So when you start playing the flute, you've got a very wide band of air. So you get a sound like this. And you're using all the air in your lungs. But then when you develop the ability to create this very fine jet of air that's very powerful, you start to develop a tone, which is as opposed to and you're using all your breath, and you're getting out of breath and getting dizzy, and so it's a very difficult thing to start. But when the body learns to relax with the instrument, it's a bit like, substitute the flute for the human body. The human body is an instrument. It's in its own right, because it's being played by the circumstances of the moment. The temperature of the air is all coming into play. And the more we can relax into the body, and again, relax with the flute, the more we can be easy with the moment. And so it's really a way to get out of the way, is a better way of describing it. You actually remove yourself from the equation. And by the self, I mean the fictitious entity that we create based upon beliefs, opinions, judgments, stories, all that memory that we project onto the future. And now I'm in a situation now where I no longer believe in the separation of individual selves, like individual personalities, because through a lifetime of inquiry, somehow that has diminished in its intensity and power. So I can now relax into being in the present moment, which allows. And so I don't really write music anymore, as such, because you've probably noticed in your experience with listening to an enormous number of musicians that we all have our style, our tune, if you like, our original melody, and we can get stuck in just creating variations on the theme. It's hard to come up with something new after a while, because you're so full of tunes. I mean, I'm a tune magnet. I have to be very careful, because if I hear tunes playing, they start to try to loop in my consciousness. And I found that actually recently as a very useful thing. I have, myself, and I noticed my brother has it as well. We have a habit of humming. Mm-hmm. They used to call us the Hum Brothers, Mike and I.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, becoming aware of that humming and how it creates movement in the body, like I would find my foot tapping to the humming to the tunes I was creating in my mind. And the more I became aware of that, the more I was able to actually come into the present moment, because I see the humming as a kind of avoidance of the present moment, because the separate self, which is a fiction in my experience, doesn't want to face the emptiness which it sees as the present moment, because in the present moment there's no room for me as such, because I have to dive into the being of flow, which is constantly changing. And the separate self wants solidity and repetition, and needs to recognize and feel safe in this fictitious world that we create around us. I don't know if any of that makes sense. I'm trying to.
No, it does.
Yeah, good.
So for me, so during the pandemic, right? Of course, I didn't know if I will survive, or my wife and my son. So I'm a computer scientist. I was going too fast in my life. I wasn't stopping, right? Like a train that goes 200 miles an hour, right? And then all of a sudden, I needed to stop because there was big event in the world, and like they say here in the United States, I thought about what was important to me and what wasn't important. Get rid of the stuff that wasn't important. Smell the roses, like they say here in the United States, and music has always been very important to me, right? Like I told you, Sally. Um, I don't know how to read music. I don't know how to write music, play any instrument at all, but I've been listening to music for, I don't know, 3 hours a day for the last 50 years. And I have a huge music collection. I mean, like 7,000, 8,000 CDs, vinyl, 3 stereos in different rooms. So it has always been very important, all kind of music. And I was going too fast. As I said, well, I may die, so I better start doing stuff that I really like it. And that's why I opened the radios and I began doing interviews. And I noticed that from a psychological point of view, before the pandemic, I was living in the past. Why did I do the stuff I did? Why did I make the following mistake? Or living in the future where I would like to do that. I would like to do that. So, but I wasn't living in the present at all. As if I was avoiding the present, if you will. I was kind of, in a way, avoiding the silence. And I began looking myself in the mirror more and say, well, this is now. I mean, why? I don't know if it makes sense, but it's hard for people to, it took me a while to really concentrate and say, I need to live in the present. The past is the past. The future, I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow or not, but live here in the moment. And it has been taking me a while. To say the least.
Well, sometimes it takes an extraordinary event to bring us into that state where we are so dissatisfied with our current way of experiencing life that it kind of wakes us up. And, you know, it can be an event like we've experienced in the past couple of years, this so-called pandemic, or it can be a death in the family, or you can become really ill.
Yep.
But it takes something extreme, because otherwise we're nice and easy. We're very happy, not happy, but we're very comfortable, because we've created a fortress around ourselves. We've created this, we've created this amazingly clever way of interpreting reality that has nothing to do with reality, because that's reality is constantly flowing and changing. And we resist the change by saying, I want that, I don't want that, constantly trying to set our lives up to be nice and safe. You know, we recognize everything's in place, you know, right, feel comfortable, right? But actually, it's the very essence of suffering, because we keep heading towards an object that we think is going to make us happy. And when we get it, we have this brief moment. Okay, that's great, I've got it. And then you want something else. And it goes on and on. It's a constantly repeating pattern, which we call life. It's actually not necessary to look for something to make us happy. We can be happy now with whatever is happening. That's what I've discovered. And it's quite an incredible. It looks so simple when you see it, but to actually break through this automation, you know, and relating it back to music, you know, I can pick up. I never practice these days. I pick up the flute, and something new happens, and it doesn't have structure as such. Like, for example, I've done a lot of just improvised recording recently, and I'm just playing what I'm feeling in the moment. That's it, really.
Where do you think the music comes from?
Well, it's where everything comes from. It's we live in a soup of energy, and the we have these amazing mind-body mechanisms which can interpret that soup, that sea of energy, into this incredibly beautiful world.
Mm.
And so when and with sound, because everything is vibration, we have these sensing mechanisms. And like I'm sitting here, you can probably hear the bird song in the background. We have a lot of parrots, and it's like a symphony all around us. But when I start to express my emotion through the breath, it comes out as music, what we call music. The birds are expressing themselves now, naturally and harmoniously, just communicating. So I'm just communicating what I'm feeling through an instrument which is very clever. It's got all these wonderful keys and it's designed. To begin with, flutes were just a bamboo tube with a hole in, and now we have all this incredible complexity that's sort of simplified into, if you press that, it makes that note.
But perhaps we surround ourselves by things, by stuff, to avoid looking inwards and looking yourself in the mirror. That's the best way I can express. It's
totally. Avoidance. If you look at that word, avoid.
That's right.
Avoid is ignoring the emptiness.
That's right. Yeah.
And the emptiness is the very thing that we are, because we are pure consciousness that contains everything. This is, and there is an expression I've heard, I don't know where it came from, but when you disappear as an object, facing other objects, you reappear as the solitary subject that contains everything.
Wow, that's a very good way to put it. Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in you have a unique family. Your brother Mike and your sister Sally, they're very well known. And were you born like in a musical family? How old were you when you perhaps began taking piano lesson or guitar music? Was music at home? Your dad playing instrument, or there were vinyl around? How you guys started, learning about music?
Not a musical family at all. My grandmother used to play the piano a bit, and my father had a guitar, which he used to play. Jimmy Crack Corn and I Don't Care, that sort of stuff, And no, it was definitely the 60s, because everybody wanted to start a group. Everybody wanted to be like the Beatles or the Stones or whatever. And we just bought a guitar and, set it up in the garage. And it was just like that. And also, I know from Mike, and I write about this, and he writes about this in his autobiography, is that music was a means to connect with to express emotion, because unfortunately our educational system and also parental guidance is moving towards avoiding our feelings. And so we come into this world as beautiful, open. You've seen what a baby's like. Wow, everything's wow, And then we get told not to, don't. And so we get driven out of the body and disconnected from the feeling. And music, I think for Mike and for Sally and I, was a way of expressing feeling, because none of us up until a certain age were very good at words, because we didn't have much communication in the family, to be honest.
Really?
And didn't have much practice. And so I particularly withdrew so deeply into myself that I was unable to speak for a few years in communicate in the normal way with people in my teenage years.
Really?
And the flute was my saving grace, because as soon as I discovered that I could blow into a tube and express what I'm feeling, it all came out, and it was a wonderful release for me.
So each one of you will go to your individual room when you arrive from the school, and then get breakfast in the morning, and then go your way, and then come back at the same routine. It was typical, like a family dinner, or where your mom or your dad, the three of you on a table having dinner, or no, it wasn't like that.
No, we didn't have that kind of family interaction. We were very alone as people in a difficult family situation, which I go into in the book quite deeply.
Yep.
And I know Mike used to listen to music all the time, a bit like you, I think.
Oh yeah, I will get along with you, brother.
Yeah, he was always in his room. He had all his albums. He was the best sound system he could afford at the time. Headphones, at night. When he got his guitar, he was teaching himself all these instrumentals. He used to have long instrumentals that he used to work out.
Yeah.
And,
but the common thing was music, right? I mean, Mike could have gone to his room, or Sally to her room, and read books or write poetry, whatever. But the three of you picked music as a way as an escape, if you will, right? So.
Well, I remember my sister's room was always blaring out music, songs, from the top 10 and all that. I was a bit of a late developer. I mean, my first real dive into music, although I used to listen to all the music of the early 60s, was when Mike and I developed a band called Barefoot.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And we used to just we were not good as a band because we were both exploring. I mean, Mike was quite a good guitarist, but I mean, I had no idea really. So we used to play very heavy rock, and we were quite popular in some places, like universities. We used to play, and yeah. I remember we used to drive down to places like the Zoom Club in Frankfurt in our transit van, and it was fun. But I mean, we all realized that it was not going to take us anywhere. Yeah.
Well, eventually the three of you became famous.
It's amazing, isn't it? We all went our separate ways, and we all found our way in the music. Well, yeah. Yeah, very, very blessed, I feel.
Yeah. You left school. I read somewhere that you left school, I think when you were 16, to travel around the world and as a roadie, support a certain band. Feel free to.
Yeah. I was. I left school. I kept running away from school because they sent me to boarding school when I was 12, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. So I kept running away. Eventually, they got the message, and they let me go to a local technical college where I didn't do any work. I just used to play table tennis in the common room and chat up girls. I wasn't interested in education at all.
Yeah. It seems something happens similar to me as well. I was a very bad student. I was kind of chasing girls and drinking beer, and I wanted to listen to music. And at the time in Latin America, there were not going any bands. I was going crazy. And then 36 years later, I have done well academically. I have changed my life a lot, and I've been able to see, close to 40 bands a year here, and I have done well. So I'm very fortunate, I think. And music is magic to me. I don't know. I had never been able to describe it, but I put my headphone, I drink a beer or whatever, and I travel with music. It takes me places. And it doesn't have to be like a soft music like yours. I can be listening to you know, the Tubular Bells or Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin or Frank Zappa, whatever. And it takes me places. It's a beautiful thing, man. So
I was recently on a long haul flight, and I was listening to Eric Clapton's autobiography.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised how difficult he found things until he was in his 50s. he really struggled. So it was it's an enormous lesson when you see that in people who are so talented and so successful. They have everything at their fingertips, in terms of what everybody thinks will make you happy. You've just got everything, but you're miserable. And when you see that happening, you begin to question, well, maybe if I had that, maybe you just put this little question in a spanner in the works, because that automation that constantly wants, going back 3,000 years to the Buddha, who said this to begin with, and all the great teachers have always said this. The craving and aversion is the essence of suffering. Wanting something and not wanting something. And there's been a lot of casualties in the music world. Jimi Hendrix. All those people that didn't make it because they found themselves in a world where they were idolized. They had everything, but it didn't do it. This is the key to awakening. Is you have to tread the path to discover that the path leads back to the beginning, where everything is here that you want, because we're being fed this smorgasbord of wonderful stuff all the time, every moment, and we're just not present to take it in. Because we're constantly wanting something, or regretting, or resisting. And the Dalai Lama's bottom line is acceptance is the key to peace. Not wanting to change things all the time, not wanting things to be different. And the pandemic was an amazing lesson for so many people, because you didn't have a choice. You had to be where you are. You got locked up. How much more of a message do you need to say, well, okay, I've got to make the best of what I've got around me here? So people started working in their gardens. So many people I know have created amazing vegetable gardens, planted trees, done things that they wouldn't normally do, because they were so busy planning and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's been a very positive thing in the sense of awakening a lot of people to go beyond the normality, the mechanical way of life that is so common.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So you learn how to play your instrument kind of on your own? You didn't have any formal training and
No, I just picked it up when I was on a Greek island when I was 19. Yeah, I was just backpacking around, looking for something. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew that what I had was not enough. And so I was on a journey towards something. It's I didn't know what I was looking for.
Yeah,
I think that's a very healthy thing to do for young people, actually, just to throw up your arms and put a backpack on and go out into the world and see what happens.
Yeah, it's you need to be, I think, risky and adventurous in life to accomplish anything, I suppose, right? If you stand still or your parents tell you what to do, you will perhaps not discover yourself, perhaps you will not follow your path.
Yeah.
And you will do what people tell you, what the way that you should live your lives, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, like they say in Zen, if the cup is full, there's no room for anything new.
Mm. Yeah. So I think your dad was a medical doctor. So I kind of, when I began doing research on your life, and it was surprised that usually medical doctor, they put a lot of pressure to schooling is the only way to make it. You need to have very good grades and try to apply to a very good university and find a girl, get married, and so on and so forth, as opposed to your life and your brother's life, where they were unstructured. You do whatever they wanted to do, and they did okay. Just follow a different path, I suppose, right?
Well, the lucky thing for us was, and it was a very sad situation actually, but it was lucky for us that the efforts to get us educated were made when our parents were actually in a reasonably harmonious state. But when everything fell apart for them, they didn't have time for us, and so they didn't really care what we did anymore. So we were free from quite an early age to explore without the pressure, because their lives didn't work. It was pretty obvious that it wasn't working for them. So how can they give us advice?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, to raise a kid. I mean, my son is 18, and I want for him to be happy and find their own way of life, and then grow with mistake and successes, and be happy. And as opposed to me telling him, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, and so support that. It's my parents were like that. No, schooling is the only way. You need to forget about music. You listen to a lot of music that will not make you any money. You will not be able to go to a good school if and I was in many ways a rebel. And because I was a rebel, I did okay in my life. I grew up differently, or I was like a late bloomer, if you will. And then I did all right in my life. But I struggle a lot between the ages of, 18 or 20 or 21 until I came here to the United States. So, but if it hasn't been for that experiences, I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Exactly. And so as parents, we have a responsibility to let our children go, in a sense, which is I mean, I have 5 children, and they've all found their way in the world, because they're all grown up now, and somehow they found their way. And I didn't really give them a lot of advice, to be honest. There was no pressure coming from me anyway, because I went through that.
That's right.
And I was given the pressure, and I felt like I was being put in prison.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So I didn't do that to my children. And they found their way. They're all doing things that they wanted to do, and I'm very happy for them. So I've just finished doing the rounds. Actually, I went to England to see my son, who's got 2 young girls, and my daughter, she's got 3 boys. Spent some time with them.
Yeah.
Then we just went down to Sydney to see my other daughter, who's working with, she writes code for airline companies. She's found, her joy in that. And my other daughter has gone back to living off the land in Tasmania. She has a family with 2 beautiful, a boy and a girl, and they bought a piece of land and they just put a container on it, and they're just literally doing things from the ground up. And they didn't have any idea what to do, but they're learning as they go. So they're growing their own stuff. They're gradually putting infrastructure in place, living in the woodlands, very small community. And we went to stay down there. And they're all so different. And if we try to make our children the same, I mean, we're just going to get, it's like in music, when I first started working with films and television, I was given access to orchestras. You know, the BBC Northern Singers. You know, I could say I want some singers. I want some, you know, I want a string quartet. But at a certain point, when all the electronic keyboards came in, everybody set up their home studios and was sending in demos to all the producers and the BBC or whatever. They said, oh, well, we can save a lot of money by doing this electronically. So, yeah, and they reduced the budget on all the music. And I found myself having to set up my own home studio and learn how to do all the sort of sampling and stuff, which I didn't really want to do because I was very happy working with real musicians. And but I was earning a living. I had a young family. And I've just had to duck and weave and adapt to the changes as a musician. But I was very, very lucky to have experienced the heyday of music. You know, when we used to get pre-sales, I used to get pre-sales of you know, 40,000 CDs on a release. Now that is unheard of today. You just don't hear of it anymore, except if you're, you know, if you're a real big star. Yeah. It just doesn't happen. It's all this streaming, and we have to adapt in a sense to live in this world, but to a certain extent, that knowledge that we need in order to function needs to be operating in the background, whereas what tends to happen, which creates, again, this mistaken identity, is that the identity is formed around belief systems and knowledge, and we think that's what we are. I mean, it's a very, very huge subject, this, because it's as complex as you make it, but it all boils down to the simplicity of letting go of all that knowledge, letting go of all your belief systems, emptying out, and allowing that to function, because I'm still capable of functioning. You know, I can still do all my electronics and computer stuff, servicing my instruments, you know, all that's, and writing a book, you know, it's all there, but I know that that's not who I am. It's almost like an operating system that is functioning through me, rather than I'm not that.
But both are, I would argue that both are important. There's nothing wrong, right? You know, finding who you are in this world, and at the same time, you know, creating music, you release the book, you're doing that external stuff. That, I think, wouldn't you agree that that's part of you as well, right?
Absolutely. No. I mean, it's not part of me, but it's what's happening through me. You know, we're all unique in the way that we are it's a different sort of language I use these days, are used by the universe, if you like.
Yeah.
And I see openness as the most powerful thing, because unless there is openness here, nothing new can flow through there, because I'm just taking from the past and projecting onto the future. If I think that's all I can do. So to be completely empty and allow that all the memories and the knowledge to be there in the background as a skill, you know. We don't beat our hearts, we don't run our blood supply, you know, we actually don't think, but we think that we think. So we create a thinker. Yeah. And I'm the thinker. I'm in here running the show. So it's actually a fictitious character. There's nobody in here running the show. There isn't. What's running the show is something completely and totally mysterious. which I'm happy to let it be mysterious, because it's such a powerful force. How can, we think we're so clever, sending rockets around the space and colliding with asteroids, but actually try running a leaf. Try organizing the bodily system. You can't. It's being run by something which is infinitely more knowledgeable and powerful than anything that we humans can come up with. Because all we can come up with is what's in the hard drive, the memory. Because memory is experience that is stored. But that experience is coming from the present moment. We're just taking snapshots of the present moment.
Mm.
There's a different way of living where you can just be empty and allow everything to flow through.
Mm. Wow, this is a very good way to explain that. You have done a lot of, I think you have done over 50 albums or so, and films and TV production, the BBC, and you have done a lot of very good stuff. And, when you were 16, when you left home, and you ever thought that your life will turn out to be that way, or?
No. I mean, I'm writing in my book how I struggled with the desperately trying to find a niche, because I had this enormously successful brother who was sort of suddenly taken up by the universe and supported in an enormous way. Mm-hmm. And I felt that I wasn't for some time. And the pivotal stuff started to happen for me when I gave up trying to be a musician. And this is another lesson that we can learn, that the trying to achieve something sometimes is detrimental to the actual result. Because when you give up, you're saying, okay, I accept things as they are. And then, of course, there is room for something new to come in. But as if I've got to have this, I've got to have that. I want that. I want to be like him. I want to be like her. I'm coming from a position of complete, I don't have it. I lack it. So you're telling the universe, I don't have it. And the universe is always agreeing with you. No, you don't. That's true. Yeah. Okay. That's it. That's the truth. So if I let go of all that and say, oh, okay, I give up. Some of the liquid drains out of the cup. Maybe something new can come in. And that was what happened to me. I tell the story. I hope you don't mind me showing my book here. This is
of course, yeah.
My autobiography.
That's right, yeah.
476 pages of stories. And I decided, well, I'm going to give it one last shot. I'm going to rent a cottage in Wales, in some remote part, and I'm going to take a 4-track and a 2-track and a few instruments with me. I'm going to see if I can write something. And I spent a winter, very lonely, actually, I was, in a cottage in Wales. And I came up with a piece of music, very, very, which I still have somewhere. I can send it to you if you like, if you're interested. The original demo.
Yeah, I would love to, yeah.
And it was called Spiral, because I've always been interested in geometry, mathematics, because I see it as very closely related to music, actually. And it was based on a chord progression that rose and descended at the same time. A bit like a spiral. You go up octaves, in every time you turn a circle, you're going up in an octave. And in between, in the Western scale, we have the chromatic scale. So you've got A, you're going all the way up through the chromatic scale, and you come to A. At the same point above, when the circle has turned again and risen, it's double the rate of vibration. And that's what we call an octave. So it's dun, da, that's an octave. And I was fascinated by all this, and it was a very mechanical piece, but it had all the angst I was feeling. It had all the terrible lack. I put it all into the music, and I felt better afterwards. So I made 20 cassettes, because it was just well before the time of CDs and all that.
That's right, yeah.
And I sent them off to various record companies, film companies, TV, whoever I could find in the phone book, basically.
That's right.
And then I waited. I thought, oh, right, okay, I'll see what happens. Nothing happened. Nothing. For 3 months, I was expecting some sort of response. And then the only positive response I got was from Richard Branson.
Wow.
He got a copy. Because I was very good friends with Richard in those days.
Really?
Yeah, I used to stay at his house, and we used to go fishing and stuff. And he said, "Oh, I like this. This sounds interesting. I'll play it to Simon Draper, who was then running the A&R department at the new Virgin offices in Portobello Road, in Vernon Yard."
That's right.
And Simon said, "Oh, this is good. I like this." So they called me in, and they said, "Okay, we'd love to do something with this. The only drawback is that we want you to do a family album with Mike and Sally." It would have been wonderful, and I was very excited about that. I got a from Mike immediately, which is understandable. He was already on a wave of his own. He didn't want to do that, so it didn't happen. So I gave up, basically, and I went back to my island where I'd originally discovered the flute, because I was living on an island doing odd jobs for people, whitewashing walls, house sitting for people, because the house was full of houses that people only used for holidays. So I used to live in their houses while they were away and water the gardens, and it was a nice life, beautiful life, actually.
Good for you, man.
Yeah. And so I went back there, and I was there for several weeks, and there was no internet in those days. Blessed times, actually. And I used to get any mail used to come to the post office, and it was always addressed to Post Restant, Hydra, Greece, Terry Oldfield, whatever. So I went down there to check my mail one day, and there was a telegram, and it was from a producer at the BBC who had come across my cassette lying on somebody's desk and had played it. And he was working on a series called Great Railway Journeys of the World.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, "This is perfect for my my series. Would you be interested in doing that?" And I said, okay. Yeah. So I went back to London, borrowed some money for the flight, and he met me and we talked about it. And I said, "Look, I have no experience doing this sort of work." He said, "No, I'll come down. I'll come into the studio with you, and we'll work it out." So he was my guardian angel. He was incredible. Jerry Troiner, his name was.
Yeah.
And so I took whatever instruments I could amass, because in those days, we couldn't afford session musicians, and he was working on a tight budget for this series, and somehow we managed to put it together, and the series was enormously successful. And one thing led to another, and I started working on other things, and that was the beginning of my career. But it was launched at that cottage in a remote part of Wales in the winter, when I had given up, or when I had one last shot at it, and then I gave up, and then it all started. And I became enormously successful at that. Everybody wanted me to write. I experienced suddenly oh wow, all the things suddenly started to effortlessly drop into my lap. And then even then, the way I got into doing albums was a painter, an artist called John Hitchens started recording my music off the TV. And he was using it for inspirational background music for his work. And he was quite a well-known artist. And he wrote to me asking if I would put together a cassette for him. And he offered to pay me quite a large amount of money, actually, so I did it. And a few months later, I got a letter from a record company, New World Music, which was just starting up. And they offered me a deal. So, and I thought, okay, I'll do that. I didn't expect anything. And then again, 3 months later, I got my royalty statement, 80,000 CDs, cassettes sold, and that just was so effortless that I was given this amazing support. And I see that support as coming as a direct response to my acceptance of my failure, if you like, not failure, but acceptance of, okay, I'll just go with whatever happens. I'm going to stop trying to be a musician. I'll just play my flute if I feel like it. And in came the means to do everything I'd wanted to do.
Your brother Mike, on the other hand, success came so fast, so early in his life that drove him crazy. I suppose. Well, I know the story, but if you became famous so in your life that in a way the first interview is okay, the first deal is good, the money is good, but eventually, you get emails and email didn't exist and stuff, but phone call and faxes and then you become an introvert. Say, man, I'm glad that I did that, the Tubular Bells thing, but I'm being bombarded. I need to escape to an island where no phones, no fax machines, and escape in a way, right? That a fair way to put it. And
absolutely, Mike suffered terribly. He just couldn't handle it.
Deal with that, yeah.
He couldn't. In fact, Virgin took me on the payroll as his go-between, Virgin and him, because
really,
Richard couldn't get through to Mike.
Yeah,
he just couldn't, and so I was given a company car and a salary, and I was the go-between for quite some time, and I used to answer the phone and do all Mike's liaison. And even drive him around, actually, if he had to go somewhere, because he was in such a state. He openly writes about this, so I can speak about it quite openly myself.
Yeah.
And it happens to a lot of people who get catapulted to fame. I think they get it's too much. It's too much. He couldn't deal with it.
And in many ways, if you, became famous, like the Led Zeppelin guys or the Pink Floyd guys, the Genesis guy, in many ways changes your value system, because you have access to women. If you're married, you're in trouble, to drugs, to the easy life, and people do stuff for you, and you start losing your value system, if you will, right?
Yeah, you get. I mean, it's enormously big incentive for the ego to get quite big.
Yeah,
because you're being given everything you want, and you have this sense of power that comes in, and unless you have the balance of the inner inquiry, actually, because the most powerful question we can ask ourselves is, who am I? Because that really is something that, if we can live with that question, it takes the wind out of the sails of the egomaniac, that wants to sort of, control everything and know everything. And people will will die to defend their belief systems, and you can see how that's happened in history with wars fought over the most ridiculous things, the conflict between belief systems, different belief systems. Absolutely. It's really much more healthy not to have any belief systems, to be honest.
What do you think that happened after we cross over and sort of died, quote unquote? Where do we go? Where we come from? Where do we go after this experience in life?
I don't know, basically, but I have a feeling that whatever we believe will happen. And that's, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I'm just saying that I have a feeling that because all this, the whole universe is a picture I keep next to my.
Yep.
This is Vishnu in Hindu mythology, and and Vishnu is dreaming the world. Yeah. So I like the Hindu mythology because it sort of has, it doesn't just have the one idea. It's got all these symbols which relate to different aspects of what's happening. And so it's possible that when we die, some of us don't realize we're dead even for some time. And because I don't think consciousness, consciousness has to be eternal. It's not, because it's not dependent on the brain. I mean, these bodies, I mean, if you use the simple inquiry of a child, am I my hand? No, I'm not my hand, because if I cut it off, I'm still here. Take away the arm, I'm still here. You can take away most of the limbs and you're still there. It's the consciousness that is flowing through this body. It's not, there's nobody in here. That character that we create based on beliefs, stories,
but
is not here.
But where consciousness come from? I mean, when you are born, I don't know, consciousness coming to you. I don't know how that works, but I have my own way of thinking about that. But where does consciousness reside as far?
Well, we're trying to look at it through the analytical mind.
Yeah.
And this particular mind is designed to operate in a world of polarity, which is this world. The yin yang, all that sort of stuff. The world of opposites. And so, if you try and look at something infinite, which consciousness is infinite, it's infinite consciousness, which means it doesn't exist in the world of time. Now we live in this world using time with memory and projection.
Yep.
That seems to be how we operate. But if we try to use this analytical mind to understand what infinity is, it's not going to happen. So we have to be able to accept that there is a mystery. That I don't know is a very powerful statement. And the need to know comes from the separate analytical mind that has to be solving problems all the time. Because it's no, you could, this could be an Encyclopedia Britannica. It can get as complicated as you like. But ultimately, if we can reach the point where we let go of needing to know, we're able to function much more happily and joyfully in this world.
I have an inquisitive mind, so I ask myself that kind of question. I mean, Where's God? Where we came from? What happened after we pass away? It's life after life, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
my parents died some years ago. I would like to see them in one way or another. I don't know.
Everything is possible because this is a world where what we believe happens.